Voters in Ukraine went to the polls over the weekend to elect a new president. Billionaire businessman Petro Poroshenko has claimed victory, but major challenges lie ahead for the new leader. Ukraine has been gripped in crisis for months. Crimea seceded and joined the Russian Federation in March. In Ukraine's southeast industrial heartland, separatists in two of the biggest regions voted for independence from Kiev. The self-appointed leaders, and one of them, Donetsk, also asked for union with Russia. On top of that, the country has huge economic problems. For the latest on the election and what the outcome may bring, we're joined now from Kiev by CCTV's Roy Ruttenberg. And Roy, let me ask you straight off the top, what's the mood like in the country a day after the election?
Well, it depends where you're standing. Here in Kiev, the people that we spoke to on the streets said that this is a really good day for Ukraine. They're relieved that there was a decision in just one day on Sunday, that there was no need for a runoff. There were fears that Poroshenko might not get 50% of the vote. It appears that he has, and of course the fact that Yulia Tymoshenko conceded only helped provide some of that relief. Some people here saying that he is the solution that Ukraine needs right now. Some people frustrated by what they feel are recycled faces. He is a familiar face to those who are following Ukrainian politics. But people here saying that he needs to be given a chance, and if he's surrounded by the right people, if he puts together the right team, he can actually resolve some of the country's problems. In the East, the sentiment is very different. Some people there who are boycotting the elections saying flat out, this man is not my president, he does not represent my country. So of course, those are the people who will be unlikely to respond positively to a Poroshenko victory. And of course, we're hearing mixed responses also about what he can do and what he can't do from those people.
Roy, what can you tell us about the conduct of this election? Would it be fair to say that where the election took place, it was free and fair?
Well, according to OSCE observers and officials who were here monitoring the elections, and that included a number of people, more than 1,000 from around the world, including the head of the U.S. delegation, the former U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, at a press conference here in Kiev on Monday, OSCE officials said the elections were fair. There were some slight discrepancies, but not enough to make this election illegitimate. I spoke to the former Deputy Minister of Justice here in Kiev earlier in the day, and he told me that regardless of the results, the fact that the vote was held, that the opportunity was given for people to vote, even if it was blocked in some area of the country, means that the election itself is legitimate. That does not negate the result. So from the people who are observing, we understand that the elections were considered fair and legitimate. We've even received a positive response from Russia. Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister there, saying that he would work with Poroshenko, the next president of Ukraine.
Right, now you mentioned the eastern part of the country where a number of voters boycotted this election, but what is the security situation there right now?
Well, the Ukrainian authorities have been saying for weeks that they're entering the final stage of their so-called anti-terrorist operation, and just hours after Poroshenko, the polls closed, after he declared victory in this election, we heard him say that he will continue the operation there, but with a new approach. It's unclear exactly what that meant, but just a few hours later, we know that armed groups took control of Donetsk International Airport in the last few hours. On Monday, there was armed confrontation, black smoke emerging from the area around the airport, jets flying overhead. We understand that at least one helicopter was shot at, perhaps even shot down. So it appears the confrontation there is continuing. We also understand from our colleagues in Sloviansk that the shelling there continues between separatist groups and SBU forces, ATO forces. Sloviansk has been surrounded by anti-terrorist operation forces for the last several weeks, as the city is held by rebels. It's a city of 120,000 people, and the armed groups, the separatist groups there, the so-called rebels, have been holding it quite firmly, and that's presented a bit of a challenge here. It is worth pointing out that Petro Poroshenko, in his first address, said that he would make his first visit as president to the Donbass, to the eastern regions, to speak to the people there.
Well, let's talk a bit more about Poroshenko. He's a businessman known as the Chocolate King. He's claimed an outright victory. What else do we know about him?
Well, he is a self-made businessman, ranked one of the richest people in Ukraine. He started by selling, perhaps surprisingly, cocoa beans, and then moving on to chocolate and the Roshen factory. He entered politics more than a decade ago, first as a member of Ukraine's Social Democrats, entering parliament there, and then splintering off to his own left-of-center faction, Solidarity. The Social Democrats were loyal to Leonid Kuchma, the president of Ukraine, and then he was instrumental in helping create the Party of Regions, the party of the ousted president Viktor Yanukovych. This party, too, at the time was loyal to Leonid Kuchma, and perhaps surprisingly, Poroshenko at the time split off and lent his support as campaign chief to Viktor Yushchenko, the president that emerged following the Orange Revolution. And perhaps surprisingly to many of our viewers, Poroshenko is considered one of the big financiers behind the Orange Revolution here. Of course, that happening several years ago. And Poroshenko now, perhaps some say, reaping the benefits of it, but again, giving some credence to perhaps those people who say that these are simply the same recycled faces. And now, of course, he is emerging victorious. He ran as an independent candidate, but observers here say in order to actually be effective, he will need to build some support and new loyalties in the parliament, perhaps even creating his own party ahead of future parliamentary elections.
Right, Roy, and you've been talking to people on the streets of Kiev there. Do they think that Poroshenko has the necessary, I guess, political and diplomatic skills to bring this divided country together?
You know, one of the terms I heard used was the lesser of evil options. Well, that's probably not how a new president wants to be described, but people here saying this was their best choice. Here in Kiev, people are frustrated by months of occupation of the central square, the Maidan behind me, and of course we can't forget those deadly clashes in February where dozens were killed, protesters facing off with security forces and snipers as well in one of the buildings behind me. So that is a fresh scar here that is still felt by many people, and many people wanting to see this crisis resolved. Now, of course, the crisis in the East also being on people's minds, and Poroshenko is seen as a pragmatic man, a person who has achieved a lot in both business and in politics. He has said already that he would negotiate with Russia, but he's had some tensions with Russia over his businesses, his Russian factories there being seized. So it's unclear how he'll do it. They like the fact that he's considered a pro-European. He's talked about greater integration with Europe, and also the fact that he's willing to stand up for what they believe to be standing up for his positions. He said quite firmly here no to recognizing Russia's so-called annexation of Crimea. So it's unclear how he'll do the things he wants to do, but people here are saying he needs to at least be given a chance based on his proven history.
Okay, thanks, Roy. Roy Ruttenberg, they're reporting from Kiev. We are going to take a break right now. When we come back, we'll hear from a Ukrainian who is closely monitoring events in his homeland. Stay with us. You're on The Heat.